I'm Ross Dawson, partner within the business transformation practice and head of operations, procurement and supply chain within Eton Bridge Partners. In support of Inclusion Week, my colleagues and I are conducting a series of interviews and meetings with business leaders to discuss their heritage, background and career experiences in the hope that we can continue to raise awareness about this key topic. I'm joined today by Seema Talwar. Seema is a global Seema is a senior global operations executive who's recently left her role as senior vice president for international operations at Walt Disney Company after an impressive career with 20th Century Fox. Seema started there as a temporary administrator and worked her way up to become the global lead for operations and was a key sponsor and change agent, guiding the business through the acquisition of the business by Walt Disney and the subsequent merger. Seema, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And maybe you could start by telling me a little bit about your background and home setup.
Okay, so my parents sort of moved to the UK when they were in their early 20s, at a time when the UK was a little less cosmopolitan than it is today. And so I grew up feeling different because of the colour of my skin primarily. All I wanted to do at that age was blend in, and at that age you stand out. And it was a time when racism was rife, but less talked about than it is today. It was almost brushed under the carpet, and our parents told us just turn the other cheek, stiff upper lip, all of that stuff. So quite hard when you're a child. And then my mother had come here in her early 20s, quite young, and held on to her traditional Asian values as she grew up and as we grew up. And quite understandably, that's what she knew, that's what she anchored with. But that was quite hard when we were growing up in the West. I have a brother. And those values sort of indicated that there was no room for a woman to be anything but a homemaker. No room for career, no room for education, but, your role was to be a homemaker. And I decided at that early stage I was going to show her that an Asian woman can make it in the Western world. And that seed was planted in me quite young, and that's what I set out to do. And the rest, as I say, is history. So what about you, Ross? I mean, it'd be interesting to compare, obviously, different backgrounds, what your background's like.
Yeah, my background was completely different, obviously. So my parents are both white British. My dad was working class, very... sort of lacking in privilege, a very sort of hard, rough upbringing with a loving family in Bermondsey. And he was very bright, luckily for him, and he used to sell homework to the bullies in school. Okay. And we think he might be on the spectrum. He's incredibly clever and struggled sometimes with the social situation. So that was a brilliant way of him kind of making friends and sort of asserting himself in the playground. And he was incredibly ambitious and wanted a different life, and in essence became a chartered accountant by the time he was 21 through hard work. So a very sort of basic education, but really challenged himself and got sort of asked to do some pro bono work with KPMG. And ended up getting an internship there, and then worked through them for a while, and that's where he became an accountant. My mum was a very different sort of background. She was her father was in the RAF, so she went to boarding school and lived all over the world and rode ponies over the beach in Cyprus, and incredibly social, and absolutely loved kind of being with her friends at boarding school. And they came together having both already married people from a very similar walk of life to their own. But unfortunately, those marriages didn't work out, and they were drawn together in the work environment where mum was dad's secretary. And they were both struggling with their marriages and found sort of solace with each other and got together. My dad at that point had 5 children, and my mum had 2. My mum's children were going to boarding school, and my dad's children were at a comprehensive, and they ended up getting married and coming together. And then they had me and my younger sister. And so we were a real kind of blend of these two worlds that had come together. We were, by this point, my parents were running their own accountancy business and had been very successfully for a while. And we lived in a beautiful house in St Albans, and we went to private school, and we were really sort of installed in us that you work for this, this is this is, you're very lucky, and you have to earn this, and it's through being kind to people and respecting people and hard graft that you can become successful. And they really ingrained that into us. So I went to a brilliant school, and I absolutely loved it. And went on to university. It was just assumed that we would just go to university because that's what everybody else did. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I did French and Italian at uni, and then found myself in an environment where I just fell into a sort of sales environment, and I really like the meritocracy of it, because the harder you work, the more you get paid, basically. And with my work ethic, that actually sits really well. But I always feel that that sort of earning it is absolutely kind of prevalent and really important to me.
Yeah, and my dad was similar. He always said success, the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. And we never had a sense of entitlement growing up. Yeah. Did your going to private school and that whole you've got to earn it put pressure on you?
I didn't realise until later on. I felt I got glandular fever when I was doing my GCSEs, and I think I felt quite a lot of pressure to do well. And I did do well, and then I went to university, and I felt like I had a sort of a wobble while I was at uni, because I was like, why am I here? I'm doing French and Italian and I love it, but what's the point? What do I actually want to do? And I realized my mum said to me that she'd felt she'd felt inferior to people who had gone to uni, because she felt like she had to justify her intelligence. And that was really interesting to me, because neither of my parents had been to university. My dad had worked and sort of qualified by experience, and my mum hadn't needed to. And in those days, it was quite, she says, you only went to uni if you were really, really bright. And so it made me want to stay. But I also felt that there was this sort of messaging to me that I could achieve anything because of the privileges that I had been given and that I'd naturally grown up with, right? As a white female with, who'd come from a comfortable background. So yeah, I absolutely sort of felt, and continue to actually feel, that I need to work and achieve. What about you? How did it sort of manifest for you? Did you sort of feel that you had to try harder than others to achieve?
Did I feel I had to try harder than others? I mean, I felt motivated by my parents' background, because I was so motivated to change that viewpoint. And I understood where it came from. So I wasn't angry about it, but I understood where it came from. And I wanted to demonstrate to future generations that that wasn't the case. So it wasn't so much pressure as motivation. Yeah. And I think it was that adrenaline that kept me going.
Yeah.
So I can understand why you feel pressure when you've had a privileged background and you feel you have to almost pay back. But I didn't feel that. I just felt very driven.
Yeah. And I don't think I really ever felt pressure. I think you're right, in so much as it was coming from me. It was generated by me. My parents just wanted me to be happy. Yeah. But I felt like I had the potential to achieve, and therefore I felt sort of similar thing, that adrenaline to really achieve. And I felt like I didn't have any limits on what that could be. Yeah. So I needed to push myself to see what that could be and what those opportunities were.
Yeah. And now my mum tells me she did it deliberately. She did it to motivate me. So maybe she did, but it worked, whatever it was.
Do you think she did?
No, she didn't, but it's a nice story.
It is a nice story. And tell us about your path to become Senior VP International Operations of one of the most reputable film studios in the whole world.
So I started at 20th Century Fox straight from my degree. I did a degree in languages and business. And you know what? I just simply worked hard, remained authentic, and climbed the career ladder step by step. I didn't go in at the top. I didn't jump a few rungs. I just moved up step by step. And learned a lot along the way. I was fortunate that I worked for an amazing organisation that nurtured talent and empowered us to be the best we could be. And so that helped. And also, you know, I had a husband who really supported me. I mean, in the last few years of my job, I was traveling 50% of the time. That's hard when you've got three children like I have. So unless you've got a partner that fully supports you, I don't know that you can do it. But my husband fully supported that. And, you know, it was a step-by-step progression.
And if you don't mind me picking up on a conversation that we'd had previously, I think you mentioned that your husband was receiving some discrimination or some sort of negativity because he was supportive of you and your career. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and again, from the sort of the more traditional Asian background, because of those traditional views that the man's place is to go out and earn a living and the woman's place is at home. And, you know, people would look over the fence from the other side of the world and see something that was different to what they knew. Mm-hmm. And you understand it again because it's what they know. But there was a little bit of, well, why is he, you know, more with the kids? Why is she out working? There was a little bit of judgment, but our view was it's our life, it works for us. So we sort of didn't let that bother us. But yes, it did happen.
It's interesting, actually, because my dad is a Mormon. And within the Mormon religion, they also believe that the woman is the homemaker and then the man provides for the family. And I was brought up in both Church of England and Mormon religions. And so the messaging that I was receiving was that I should be, you know, focused on how to please my husband and how to look after the home. But even, you know, at 12, I knew that I really, really wanted to have a career and that was really important to me. And I remember just feeling really conflicted because I was thinking, my dad's sending me to this church, but he's teaching me something really different. And that's to go out and achieve and never be reliant on anybody else. So I hear that about, you know, that sort of, you know, the messaging and that kind of receipt of your position and how that manifests for you and how it sometimes it ignites more fire in you to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In hindsight, would anything have made it easier for you?
Myself, I think. I mean, you said it earlier, you put pressure on yourself. I think we all do that, particularly as women. And diversity isn't just being about female or being Asian or whatever. Diversity is a lot of things, right? But those are the most obvious diversity factors. But I think it was me, you know, I mean, I'll give you an example. When I came back from maternity leave, I almost felt I had to be better than my male peers just to stand still. That wasn't them telling me that was me telling me that. Yeah. And not having pictures of my children around the office because I thought I'd be judged for that. Again, no one said that. It was something that I'd got into my head. And I think I could have been easier on myself.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anyone made it harder for me. I think I made it harder for myself.
Yeah. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it does sometimes feel like, you know, we're sending these messages to ourselves, but we're not stupid women. We're not doing that for no reason. You know, it's because there is still a way to go with that, right? And we're just sort of finding our path and we're trying to make things as easy as possible for ourselves to achieve.
Yeah.
And pleasingly, it sounds like you had, you know, some great support around you. What help did your sort of employer provide at the time, if any?
I mean, it's hard to say because I never felt 20th Century Fox were great as a company. I never felt different. I was one of the team. I was judged on the work I did, the contribution I made. But I have seen it. I have come across it. You will always get individuals in every organisation that are old school in their thinking, or you'll come across clients or partners that you work with that are old school. But you know, as I said before, diversity to me isn't about me being a woman or me being Asian. It is about thought leadership and everything you can bring to the table. It's so much more than what you see. And I actually think I was very lucky to, and hence why I stayed 25 years, very lucky to have landed in an organisation that embraced that.
Did you have a sort of role model in the work setting?
I had a couple. So my boss in the latter years was the CIO of the company, and he was great. He almost believed in me more than I believed in myself and empowered me to just be the best I could be. And that's really freeing when someone's saying, go for it, I've got you. And then our COO was a woman, and she was almost my unofficial mentor. She taught me to be authentic, to be the best leader I could be, the importance of people and leading people. And, right down from the top, I mean, our president, created the culture of the organization, and that filtered all the way down. I mean, they say the fish rots from the head, but he really created a culture of diversity and inclusion. And it's a lot of words now, but it's more than just words. And I think we lived and breathed it. As I said before, you'll always get the odd people, but I sort of stayed out of their way. And I did get some remarks, but I just sort of ignored them. Some were hurtful, but you just sort of ignore them and move on.
Yeah.
So yes, I was very lucky.
And how do you think that's shaped your outlook on and focus on diversity and inclusion?
I think I've come a long way from the frightened little child who just wanted to blend in. I now think that diversity in every form is really important. I think the biggest challenge is that companies talk about diversity and inclusion, but what does that really mean? And there's always a subconscious bias. We all have it. So you can have as many policies as you want, as many rules of engagement, but unless you live it and breathe it, there's a saying by there's two of my favorite quotes. One is by Gandhi that says, be the change you want to see in the world. And the other is Wayne Dyer that says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that's really, really true. So it's more in the limelight now than it ever was, but I'm not sure. It's sad that we're still talking about it, I guess. All these years later, we're still talking about, diversity. So,
well, I think it's been fascinating from our seats because we get clients asking us to present a diverse shortlist, and we say, well, what does that mean? And what's the driver around it? What's your interpretation of diverse? Because we can't ask everybody about all of the protected characteristics. It's not appropriate. And also, like, what's the objective? And we found that, the inclusion bit is just it's unbelievably important to the culture of a business, right? And we've been doing a lot around well-being within our organisation. We started an initiative last year, coincidentally just before COVID hit, and we found it absolutely imperative to the kind of retaining the culture of our business over this time where we couldn't be together and we need sort of additional support together. But we've realised that our sort of D&I agenda is absolutely just fully ingrained with our well-being proposition, right? Because ultimately we want people to feel included, and you have to make you have to accommodate various things to enable that. I'm actually classed as disabled myself, and I don't think many people would know that. I have ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I struggle sometimes to manage that, and stress doesn't help it, of course, but I try and manage it with diet and exercise and stress management. And sometimes I get, I'm in a situation where I'm having a flare up, and to communicate that to somebody is embarrassing, and it's difficult, and it's emotive for me because I don't want to have it. And yet here I am in this situation where I'm actually really enjoying a conversation with somebody, but I can't help thinking about how I'm physically feeling. And to be raising awareness is so important for things like that, right? Everybody's coming from somewhere where they've got something, whether it be mental health or mental health issues, or physical impairment or something like that, and that it's so enormous, and it's just about being kind as far as I'm concerned, and it's just about considering where people are coming from. And I don't mean geographically, of course, here. I mean, what the individual is about, and how to ensure that everybody is heard and received, in essence. I do, you know, what do you have any ideas about what steps you feel that employers and employees could take to enhance awareness about diversity and inclusion?
It's really hard because I don't know how you get rid of the subconscious bias.
Yeah.
You know, you said it earlier, Ross, that you get a lot of companies saying, give me a diverse list of candidates, but we all know that people then gravitate to people that think like them or act like them, and it's hard to get rid of that subconscious bias. I think companies need to stop talking about it and just make it part of their culture. Now, I know that's easier said than done, but I really think that's important, because you see it on every, and you know more than I, every job advert you look at says diversity and inclusion is important to us, but you've got to feel that when you're in that interview or in that job, and I'm not sure that always comes through. And then how do you know, there's some, as you said, you're classed as disabled, and not many people would know that. I wouldn't know that looking at you, right? But so it's a less obvious factor. How do you get those things across? How do you walk in somebody else's shoes and think, well, maybe there's something going on here? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's keep chipping away at it, being aware of it, being aware of those biases, and looking around the organisation and saying, are we all clones of each other, or do we need to add something different here?
We've made a pact internally that we'll call each other out on things that we don't think are appropriate. And it might not be inappropriate, right? It's just about, you know, a sort of a comment or a feeling where, you know, or an event that's held that's not actually considering how somebody else is feeling about that event. You know, it's just opening up the lines of communication so that it's a safe space for people to explain their truth. I think that's where it's coming from for us.
Yeah. And that changes the culture, doesn't it? The organisation. It's hard to do, I think. Absolutely. So hopefully
we'll get there. I think, you know, I think you're right about not talking about it and sort of just ingraining it into the culture. But I think that there still is a way to go, and talking about it and raising awareness about the different aspects of it, and, you know, how different experiences manifest for different people is a good thing at the moment in this journey, until that happens. Seema, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and it's been really special to get to know you a little better in this conversation.
No, thank you, Ross, for inviting me today.
Thank you for listening. To hear more of our interviews with senior leaders, you can subscribe to the Eton Bridge podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch the full interview on YouTube. Keep in touch with us via our LinkedIn page to hear about regular news and insights.